The wind howled through the mountain pass like a beast hungry for warmth, tearing at the world with icy claws. Snow danced in the air, thick, relentless, blinding. Every flake was a dagger of cold that pierced through the girl's threadbare coat. Clara stumbled forward, her boots sinking into the drifts, her breath coming in ragged gasps that turned to frost before her lips. The old wagon had broken an hour ago. The horse had bolted into the storm. And now she was alone, utterly and terrifyingly alone in a world painted white. Somewhere behind her lay the valley she'd fled. The people who'd called her cursed for being born without family, without name, without a place. Somewhere ahead lay nothing but wilderness. And yet, she kept walking. Because stopping meant dying. Through the snow, she thought she saw smoke, a faint, wavering thread rising into the blizzard. Hope sparked in her chest. Her legs screamed, but she trudged toward it, hands numb, heart pounding. Minutes, or hours, later. She saw it, a cabin, rough-hewn and isolated, its windows glowing faintly through the storm. She reached the porch, nearly collapsing against the door, and knocked weakly. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time, desperation clawing through her chest. The door swung open. He stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like steel beneath a mess of dark hair. A man carved from the wilderness itself. A mountain man. His beard was thick, his flannel shirt open at the neck, revealing skin browned and scarred by work and weather. He looked at her like he wasn't sure if she was real or some ghost blown in by the storm. "What in God's name are you doing out here?" he asked, his voice low, deep, and rough as gravel. My horse," she stammered, teeth chattering. "Please. I just need a place to stay the night. I'll sleep in the barn, I swear." He stared at her for a long moment, then glanced past her at the swirling snow. "You step out there again, you won't last 10 minutes, he said simply. "Get inside." She hesitated, but his tone wasn't one that invited argument. He stepped aside, and she stumbled into the warmth, collapsing onto the rough wooden floor. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine. A fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with flickering light. He shut the door behind her, bolting it against the wind. "You're half frozen," he muttered, tossing a fur blanket toward her. "Get close to the fire before you turn to ice." She obeyed, trembling as the heat began to thaw her fingers. It hurt, the pain of coming back to life. She looked up at him, this stranger who'd found her at the edge of death. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond right away. He crouched by the fire, throwing in another log, the light painting his face in gold and shadow. "You got a name?" "Clara," she said softly. "And you?" "Eli." The name fit him. Short. Strong. No nonsense. For a while, there was only the sound of the fire and the storm outside. Then she said, "I don't mean to be a bother. I can take the barn, truly. Just a corner, if it's dry." Eli looked over his shoulder, eyes hard but not unkind. "There's wolves out there tonight," he said simply. "You sleep in the barn, they'll smell you. You won't make it to morning." Her breath hitched. Then, "Where should I sleep?" He met her gaze steadily. "You'll sleep next to me." The words hung in the air like thunder. Her heart thudded. I can't." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "Don't get ideas, girl. I don't take advantage of strays. But I'm not about to let you freeze to death, either. The bed's big enough for two. You keep your side, I'll keep mine." Clara hesitated, shame burning in her cheeks. But she was too cold to argue, too tired to care. "All right," she whispered. He nodded once, then stood. "You eat first. Then rest." He ladled stew from a pot that simmered on the stove, thick with meat and potatoes, and handed it to her. She ate greedily, tears stinging her eyes as warmth spread through her belly. It had been days since she'd had real food. Eli sat across from her, watching quietly. "You from the valley?" She looked down. She said. "They didn't want me there anymore." "Why?" She swallowed hard. Because I wouldn't marry the man they chose. I'd rather die in the snow than live under his hand. He grunted. You got grit, I'll give you that. After a long silence, he rose, lit a lantern, and motioned toward the back room. Come on. The bedroom was simple, a big wooden bed covered in furs. A single window shuttered tight against the wind. He turned away politely as she climbed under the covers, her heart hammering in her chest. He blew out the lantern and lay down on the far edge of the bed, the warmth of his body radiating through the cold night. For a long while, neither spoke. Clara listened to the storm rage outside and thought of the men lying inches away. She'd heard stories of mountain men, how they lived alone, untamed, half-wild themselves. But there was something steady in Eli. Something that made her feel safe for the first time in years. You always live alone up here? She asked softly into the dark. He shifted. Ain't much choice, he said. World's quieter this way. People bring trouble. Then why did you help me? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, because once, someone helped me. A long time ago. She wanted to ask more, but the warmth and exhaustion pulled her under. The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was the faint, steady rhythm of his breathing beside her. Morning came with sunlight spilling through the cracks in the shutters. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside silent and white. Clara sat up slowly, startled to find Eli already awake, stoking the fire. He glanced over, and for the first time, a hint of a smile touched his lips. Morning, barn girl, he said. She blushed. I told you I could have slept outside. He chuckled low. You'd be a snow statue by now. Over the next few days, the snow made escape impossible. Clara helped around the cabin, cooking what little she could, mending Eli's torn shirts with clumsy stitches. He worked in silence most of the time, splitting logs, feeding the animals, fixing tools, but she caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unreadable. One evening, as the fire crackled and shadows danced on the walls, Clara looked up from her sewing. When the snow melts, she said quietly, I'll go. You've done more than enough for me. Eli's jaw tightened. You could stay. At least until you find where you're headed. She smiled sadly. I've been running so long, I don't know where that is anymore. He looked at her then, really looked, and something changed in his eyes. Maybe it's here, he said quietly. The silence that followed was thick with something she didn't understand. The world outside was frozen, but in that small cabin, warmth bloomed between them like spring thawing through the snow. That night, when she lay beside him again, she didn't stay to her edge of the bed. Slowly, trembling, she moved closer, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, the strength in the arm that wrapped around her without a word. No promises, no questions. Just two souls who had found shelter in each other after too much storm. And for the first time in her life, Clara didn't dream of running. She dreamed of home. The days passed slow and quiet after the storm, each one melting a little more of the cold that had built between them. The mountain cabin sat wrapped in white silence, smoke curling from its chimney like a lifeline to the sky. Inside, warmth breathed through the wood. Clara moved through the space now with a calm that surprised her. The first morning she'd woken in panic, half expecting to find herself cast out or abandoned. But Eli was always there, silent, steady, dependable as sunrise. He wasn't a man of many words, but his actions spoke louder than any she'd ever heard. When she burnt her hand on the stove, he was there before she could cry out, pressing snow to her skin and wrapping it in soft cloth. When she dropped the bucket at the well, too weak to lift it from the frozen rope, he simply took it, his large hands working quietly until water filled it again. Clara found herself studying him when she thought he wouldn't. Notice the way his brow furrowed when he worked with his tools, the small scar that curved down from his ear to his jaw, the strength in his arms when he split logs with a single swing. He moved like a man who'd made peace with solitude. And yet when he smiled, rarely, briefly, the room seemed to brighten. He was a storm contained in human form. And she couldn't help but wonder what had made him Choose a life so far away from the world. One morning, the sun broke through, dazzling off the snow. Clara stepped outside, her boots crunching softly, and breathed in the clean, sharp air. The world looked untouched, a perfect sea of white, stretching forever. She turned as Eli came out behind her, coat unbuttoned despite the chill. He carried his axe as if it were part of him. "Never seen snow like this," she murmured. He gave a faint smile. "It'll melt fast now. The mountain don't stay still long." She watched him swing the axe, the sound of it echoing through the trees. "Eli," she said softly after a moment. "You ever think about leaving this place?" He didn't stop working. "No reason to," he said. "Everything I need's here." "Not everything," she said, her voice almost lost in the wind. He looked up then, eyes locking on hers, gray as the mountain mist. Something unspoken passed between them. Then he turned back to the woodpile, his jaw tight. That night, the wind came again, softer this time, whispering around the cabin. Clara couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring into the darkness, listening to Eli's slow breathing beside her. The distance between them on the bed had shrunk night by night, though neither mentioned it. It wasn't about desire, not at first, it was about warmth. About the quiet comfort of another human heartbeat near her own. But lately, that comfort had become something deeper. Something that made her heart race when his arm brushed hers. "Eli," she whispered. A pause. Then his voice, low and rough. "Can't sleep?" "No. Just thinking." "About what?" She hesitated. "About how it feels strange to be safe. I don't think I've ever been." He shifted onto his back, staring at the ceiling. "Safe's not always where you are," he said. "Sometimes it's who you're with." The words hit her like a spark in the dark. She turned toward him, her eyes adjusting to the faint glow of the dying fire. "And are you safe, Eli?" His breath caught slightly. "Used to be," he said. "Then you came along." Her chest tightened. "Is that a bad thing?" He turned his head toward her, and even in the dark, she could see the truth in his gaze, the ache, the conflict, the want he'd tried so hard to bury. "Depends," he murmured. "If I start needing you, I'll forget how to be alone. And that's the only thing I've ever known how to be." Clara reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing his hand. "Maybe you don't have to be anymore." The silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Then, slowly, his fingers closed around hers. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't passion, not yet. It was something more powerful, surrender. The days that followed were different. She laughed more. He spoke more. The cabin began to feel like theirs, not his. She helped with the traps, learned to stack wood. Even tried her hand at cooking wild rabbit stew, though. Eli teased her when she burned it. "Reckon you could set fire to snow," he said, smirking. She threw a spoon at him, and he ducked, chuckling for the first time since she'd met him. As spring crept into the valley, the snow softened into streams. The earth showed hints of green again. Clara felt the pull of the world calling her forward, freedom, movement, choices. But every time she thought about leaving, her heart ached. She'd come to this place broken, chased by fear and rejection. Now she found herself afraid of something new. What if leaving meant losing the only person who had ever seen her as more than a burden? One evening, as the last of the snow melted into silver puddles, Eli came in from the woods carrying a bundle of pine. His shirt was damp with sweat, his hair falling loose around his face. Clara stood at the table, drying a wooden bowl. When their eyes met, something shifted, something final, inevitable. She set the bowl down slowly. "Eli," she said softly, "when the road clears, I'll go back to the valley." He froze. "That what you want?" "I don't know what I want," she said honestly. "But I can't stay here forever. People talk. They'll say things about us." "Let them," he said, his tone harder than before. "You don't owe them a damn thing. It's not that simple." He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until she could feel the heat from his skin. "It is," he said. "You're free, Clara. But so am I." And I'm tellin' you plain, I don't want you to go. Her breath trembled. Why? He exhaled, long and low. Because you brought me back to life. Before you, I wasn't livin'. Just breathin'. This place was my grave. And I didn't even know it till you walked through that door. Her eyes blurred. Eli. He reached up, his hand brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His thumb tracing her cheek like she was something fragile and sacred. You can go if you need to, he whispered. But if you stay, it won't be because you're cold or scared. It'll be because you want me. The world went still. Even the wind held its breath. Then, slowly, she rose on her toes, her lips finding his. It was soft, trembling, unsure, but it was real. The first warmth of spring after a long, merciless winter. When they finally parted, she rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady thud of his heart. Looks like I'll be sleeping next to you a little longer, she whispered, smiling through her tears. He chuckled softly, wrapping his arms around her. Reckon the barn's too lonely without you, anyhow. Outside, the mountain began to thaw. And so did the two hearts that had found each other in the storm. That night, as they lay together beneath the same worn firs, neither spoke. Words weren't needed anymore. The silence was full of warmth, of safety, of love unspoken but deeply understood. And for the first time since either could remember, the mountains didn't feel so lonely anymore.